Hello, welcome to Supermiata. I'm going to give a brief tour of our Supermiata S1 race car we call Bullet. I'm not sure why we named it that, I forget now. But in any case, we ran this car at Super Lap Battle about a month ago, dropped the Miata lap record, and went faster than we expected, and I think faster than some other people expected. So I wanted to give people a walk around in the car and show people what we did different than a standard S1 configuration. Now, S1 is a class within Supermiata. It's a road racing class, and it's regulated to 220 horsepower. I'm going to put the camera here on the bench for a moment and open up the hood so you can see under the hood. The class is regulated to 220 horsepower. This is a mandated track speed turbo kit. Track speed engineering. We use the Borg-Warner EFR 6258 turbo. That's the spec turbo. Those are good up to about, I think should make around 370, 380 horsepower on one of these engines, depending on the engine configuration. This is exactly how we run it in Supermiata. What we did for Super Lap Battle is to simply load a different ECU map so it makes more power. It's the exact same hardware that we run in S1. It's very, very robust. Very trouble-free, and we never really have to add any oil or have anything coming loose on them, and we just run it like it was a stock engine, just one that makes a lot more power. In Supermiata and S1, we're capped at 220 horsepower. We did that for a couple of reasons, but mainly just to make it easy for people to kind of to get in and get their cars tuned. But there's certainly headroom to run other events, which we did with this. Now this is an MB1 engine, so it's a BP4W head. It's basically a stock engine. It's got forged internals, so forged pistons, rods, billet oil pump gears, heavy-duty valve springs. So it's a rugged motor, but there's no flow modifier. So there's no like porting or big valves or cams or any of that stuff. It flows the same as the stock engine. It's just really tough. Now the stock engines have a forged crank, so we retain the OEM forged crank. So it's a very tough little motor. It'll take a lot of power. You can actually run probably 450, 480 horsepower through a block like this without any trouble. So it's pretty understressed. Even at the 220 we race at is nothing for these engines. It's a piece of cake. This thing doesn't burn any oil at all. That's a non-US intake manifold, what we call the square top. Skunk throttle body. It's a little tougher than the factory throttle body. We're running track speed engineering coil on plug system there, and this particular engine has injector dynamics 1050X's in it. What else is unique about it? That's about it. It's one of our old Supermiata dampers. Those are currently out of production, but we'll have those in production pretty soon. One of our radiators. It's a very high efficiency 32 millimeter core, and then in the back here, I don't know if you can see this. It's got a reroute. This aluminum housing there at the back of the head that lets the coolant flow out the back of the head, which the stock Miata flows out the front, but that makes them overheat, and so we cap off that. Now you're wondering why that's silver. Our production ones are orange. This is one of the early prototypes we ran on this engine. That's why it's not anodized. But what else? Moroso cash can. That's on our website. It's a really nice little gizmo. Works really well with the stock PCV system. And then there's a little drain there. You can drain it periodically. We run our oil cooler. We have a C-Trab. I think it's a 950. I think, or 930. Oil cooler sits in the nose here, pointing straight down, and we run our hoses up here, and our sandwich plates down there. So the intake for the oil cooler is through here, air flows through here, and then out through the fender well. It's a stock bumper skin in the front. We cut the bottom of the bumper skin off, so this is all kind of hollow under here. And then we put a 1/8 inch thick HDP high density polyethylene air dam on there. And this is a little different. The one we run in S1 doesn't have these big flares on the side. It's a little narrower. This is a fiberglass fender we bought off of eBay. Pretty crappy fit, but they're inexpensive and durable. And it makes it's easier to bend them into shape. So this air dam, this is a 10 millimeter Lumilite. You see I'm standing on it. It's got to be, this thing generates a lot of downforce, so you've got to be able to stand on it. If it won't support your weight, don't drive on it. These will generate a huge amount of downforce. Probably We don't know. At 100 miles an hour, I'm sure it's in the many hundreds of pounds of downforce this thing will generate. We did struts instead of cables. They're just a tiny bit more aero than cables, and they'll support an equal amount of load. Plus, it was easier to set it up, take it on, put it off. These end plates are kind of huge. This is our best guess of what we thought would work for an end plate. Possibly could have been a different shape, but it was kind of a quick and dirty. We did this kind of as a last-minute thing. And you'll see one key feature here is this airflow pattern where it kind of necks down, forces the air to get trapped here on the splitter, do some work, and then exhausts out here. And by kicking this out, it helps kick the air out around the tire, which is very turbulent air. So while that looks fairly crude in DIY, that's actually a very effective and simple front end. In case you're wondering how fast we went with this, at Buttonwillow at 13 clockwise, we did a 144.9 at Super Lap, and then we went back a couple weeks later with the same tires that were kind of worn out at that point, and did a 44.6 before we broke third gear in the transmission. Actually just lost a circlip, so it pops out of third gear, but the gears are still intact. What else? These hood vents, these are Singular Motorsports hood vents, kind of a key ingredient. Miatas tend to run hot, so you got to do hood vents on them. And you kind of, I don't know if you can see it in here. This is all boxed in. You can see this. The air has to go through the radiator, and you notice there's no bumper support up here. We actually cut that part of the frame out so that you've got a clear shot at the radiator. So you got a nice clean shot at the radiator, and then the intercooler down at the bottom. So this car doesn't run hot. We run this thing, 300 horsepower or so, and it runs right at 195 degrees. Runs in 85, which helps it to run a little cooler. But we get really good cooling airflow with the hood vents. And let's see, what else we got here? Brakes. This is a kit we sell on our website. This is a Dynapro 4-pot radial mount caliper with an 11 3/4 rotor. Those are custom directional vane rotors we have made. It's a really high quality rotor. Very stout brake system with the G-Lock R18 pads in the front, and I think R12s in the back. R10s or R12s in the back. That's a 15x10, 25 offset 60 well wheel. We ran for time attack. We ran this tire. It's a 245 4015 Hoosier A7. It works really well for us. In S1 and Supermiata, most of us run polycarbonate windshields. It's a lot safer. It's also a lot lighter. We got the doors. This is a pretty heavy door for time attack. This could be, it should be, is that gray thing over here? This is a fiberglass door that we'll eventually put on our new car that we're building. This is, I don't know what these weigh. These are probably like 6 pounds. These weigh just about nothing. And these are actually just chopper gun. They're not exotic at all, but they're very, very, very light. And then the factory door is probably, gosh, I don't know, they're like 48 pounds when they're complete, and when they're stripped like this, these aren't actually that gutted. You can gut these a lot for, like we still have the crash beam. This is probably a 23 pound door or something. We can go a lot lighter, but we didn't go all out for a super lap. We just did some quick and dirty stuff. Fire system in there, sort of a little LiFePo battery with a little cover that John printed up. We have a printer here we use for various brackets and whatnot. Handheld bottle, and then we have an automatic system or semi-automatic system there with the fire pole and the master switch there. And we run an AIM MXL2 dash, and their ECU is a MS PMP2. A lot of the newer cars run the PMP3, so you could run the VVT engines, the variable valve time. You get more torque with those. What else? These are some fenders. These are some eBay quarter panels. You cut out the stock fender for the tire clearance, and then kind of seal it up. You can weld it, the inner fender, or put some silicone in there, and then put this fiberglass fender on the outside, and that gives you clearance for the big 245 tire. The NA chassis doesn't really fit the tire really well, so you need to do these bigger fenders. This is a fiberglass race skin, or this one might actually be carbon. I'm not sure. Actually, I think this one's carbon. Carbon saves a couple pounds. This, the carbon ones are about 6 pounds, and the FRP ones are about 9 pounds. This is a 1/8 inch polycarbonate scratch-resistant rear window. It's formed. We sell these on our website too, and we sell the windshields on our website. Normally we run a GT250 foil. In fact, I'm going to go back over here and show you the foil. I think it's sitting over here next to our bike stuff. This is a standard S1 foil. So it's a GT250. And there's other kind of foils that you can use that are eligible and legal to run in class, but the 250 is probably the most efficient. It's a very, very low drag foil. You get real good downforce for very little drag penalty. You run a gurney flap on pretty much every course except for Auto Club Speedway. We'll put the gurney flap off. Singular end plates, that's about the maximum area we allow in S1, so that's a really nice end plate. Very low drag also, better than the standard end plate on the GT250 is low drag, but doesn't develop as much downforce. So this is a GT1000 wing, which is very similar to the 250. The center shape here, I think, is almost identical to the 250, but of course they had this second raised element, and we had it cranked pretty much max. I think 52 degrees is max, and we ran about 45, 46 degrees on ours. And then we made these end plates. This is just a random piece of wet carbon we got off of Amazon. Turns out it wasn't nearly stiff enough. There's pictures of this on the track at speed with this bent in like 20 degrees from the suction, which is not good. So you lose a lot of efficiency, and it was also twisted around. So these should be out of a stiffer material, or cable stayed, or out of dry carbon. Dry carbon is a much more rigid material. This wet carbon is basically fiberglass, so that's why it's so springy and too soft. Mounts are something we just made up years ago. We reused those many, many times. You can run fiberglass trunk lids in Supermiata. This one is not. This is a steel trunk lid. We just gutted the underside of it. And then drivetrain-wise, we're in the same 6-speed and twin disc clutch that we run in Supermiata in S1. This car has, we put an Oesgeeken, one of our tuned Oesgeekens on our website. We sell a diff for these cars, and they're kind of pre-tuned. You buy them from other vendors, and you just get the generic spec S2, we have a custom tune in ours. Every one you buy, you don't have to request it. That's just how we ship them, and that's what's in this car. Now but it's a beautiful diff, but they're like $1,300. So we don't run those in Supermiata. We actually spec the factory torsion, which is a good diff. Not quite as nice as the Oesgeeken, but they're cheap and they're readily available. So normally in Supermiata, we're just running a torsion, but this car does have an Oesgeeken in it. And I think that's about it. I'm trying to think what else we changed for Superlap. That was pretty much it. We built this front end, stuck it on. We took the GT1000 wing, stuck it on. Different ECU maps, so it made more power. And then the Hoosiers. Now in Supermiata, we don't run the Hoosier. We run the same size tire, but it's a Maxxis RC1, which we happen to have over here. This is same size tire as what's on the car now, but this is kind of like a medium to hard compound road racing tire. We have really good, incredible life out of these. On the S1s, we're getting like, it's nuts. We're getting like 6-7 hours out of these things, which is just crazy considering the lap times we're turning. So we're having really happy with these Maxxis RC1s in Supermiata. But the Hoosiers, of course, they don't last anywhere near that long. They'll go about an hour and a half, and they're really good for the first 1 or 2, 3 heat cycles. After that, they fall off quite a bit. Whereas the RC1s kind of are the same. They're just as fast when they're old as when they are when they're new. Kind of like the old Toyo RA1 was another good tire that would not particularly not super fast, that old RA1, but they were the same even when they were old. Sometimes even better when they were old. So I don't think I'm missing anything. There isn't really much to tell. Oh yeah, suspension. So this has most of the fast S1 cars are running, they're running a single adjustable monotube coilover. That's the rules limit a single adjustable. A lot of guys like the Zeta coilover that we make here at Supermiata. I'm running 1100, 500 on my S1, 1100 front spring rates and 500 rear with a 1 1/4 racing beat bar. That's the big fat 1 1/4 bar. And then our 14 millimeter adjustable rear bar. See if I can get a shot under there, if it'll come up. Let's see. You can kind of see it. That's our in links and the adjustable 14 millimeter rear sway bar, the Supermiata orange bar. That's what we run in Supermiata, and that's what we ran at Superlap. At Superlap, with the extra grip and downforce, the car was a little bit too soft. It needed more spring rate. So we went back a couple weeks later and experimented and ran a 1,400-pound front and 600-pound rear, and that actually worked quite a bit better with the grippier tires and the extra downforce. Now, converting back to S1, that'll be probably a little bit too much spring rate, so we'll go back down to the 11,500, which seems kind of crazy, down to 11,500, but that's a lot of spring rate for a Miata, but that ends up what works because the cars turn so hard. This was sustaining about I think 1.6G during super lap, and we were seeing little peaks, little transients of 1.75, which wasn't too bad. That's on flat ground. So that's the gist of it. If you have any more questions about this build, there's a thread on MiataTurbo.net. The car's called Bullet, so you can just look up a Miata Turbo and search for Bullet, and you'll see the build thread. It's more about the S1 build, but we put some stuff in there about the super lap conversion that we did. Any questions about the products, go to 949racing.com, and you will see our products there. Give us an email at info@949racing.com. You'll reach Dan, and he'll answer any questions you have to build and help you get your car set up. We will see you at the track.